Check, check. afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our April 25th regular meeting of Belleville City Council. For those watching on the city streaming service or on our YouTube channel or on the Your TV broadcast, I would point out that our agenda and all reports are on the city website at www.belleville.ca under the agenda minutes and live meeting video on the left side of the screen. If you then click on the April 25th on the calendar, it will bring you to the agenda for today's meeting. And there is a hyperlink within the agenda in the event you wish to look at the individual reports so you can follow along with our meeting. I will now call the meeting to order and state that we are all present with the exception of Councillor Feeney, and I'll ask the Director of Corporate Services and City Clerk, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. 8A6,
right,
along with bylaws 2022-55 and 2022-59. Thank you.
Okay, if you can just fill out the paperwork and give it to Mr. McDonald, and if I can just be reminded at those points to ensure that we get you. Thank you for bringing it up. Anyone else for any items they wish to disclose? Seeing none, there are no public meetings today, so we'll move to item number 5.1, the approval of the regular council meeting minutes of March 28, 2022, the regular in-camera meeting minutes of March 28, 2022, and the special council meeting of March 29, 2022. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. We'll move on to deputations, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium Janet Gerald of the Quinte Arts Council, who will make a deputation to City Council. Ms. Gerald, good afternoon. Just if I get you push the button and the red light comes on. Excellent.
Every time.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah, you're good. So just remind me for correspondence, please.
Start.
Okay.
Let me back up just a little wee bit. Here's to old Jeter Collins and to Destiny.
Get around the tech of it. It's always nice to be here in person instead of live streaming it on my laptop at home, so it's nice to see everybody's face. Mayor, councillors, citizens of Belleville, and thank you to the art community for showing up tonight as well. Some of those who were featured in that short appreciation video. We have the River and Main Theatre here, Quinte Ballet, Quinte Symphony, the Navy League of Belleville, the Navy League. I'm going to say that properly. That's good. So on behalf of the Quinte Arts Council, Board of Directors, the team, and the arts community, I'd like to begin by again commending the City of Belleville for supporting your arts and culture. Over the past few years, our community is seeing stronger support for arts and culture, and the council deserves credit because you are implementing a strong arts agenda. I'm here today to talk once again about the role that the arts play in a thriving community and what role the QAC plays in that. We know the indicators of a healthy community, the kind of place that's likely to be visited, loved, and will have people move here. Yes, we need work. Yes, we need housing. But once people get here, they want to see a beautiful and thriving arts community. They want live music. They want an active arts community, something they can be a part of. These things are critical to healthy communities. It's wonderful to see and feel the good energy of things opening up again. So we have, recently Rockfest is coming back, and we thank the Empire for that amazing lineup. Porch Fest is going to happen. Cultural activities, the galleries are opening. We're starting to feel that community, the sense of community and belonging and togetherness that the arts plays. Celebrating all of the different, the Women's Day and milestones throughout the year. They're celebrated and recognized through the arts. We have Quinte en Plein Air happening again. The Mayor's Week of the Arts is happening. And with those things returning, we realize that arts-driven revitalization has great environmental benefits. Revitalizing older areas of our neighborhoods. The downtown is celebrating, the tete-a-tetes, the parklets, the murals. This in turn creates a stronger Belleville that is better positioned to absorb population and economic growth that might otherwise be diverted. Projects like these collectively suggest a community's cultural vitality. They attract more visitors. A healthy place to live includes opportunities for and the presence of arts, culture, and creative expression. They're important determinants of how communities are faring. We're not just giving the people of Belleville the basic needs. We go above and beyond. Just that short video is a celebration only of those who received the arts and culture funding last year. So of course our arts and culture community is much wider. But we wanted to make sure that the city was appreciated for contributing to arts and culture. The more that is put into and invested in arts and culture, the more that you're going to get back from it. You're even seeing, I hope, if I'd invite, some of you have been able to visit the Quinte Arts Council and seen the changes that are happening there. The financial support that the arts community gets only pays back in dividends when you look at the things that we can do with the extra funding. So, Quinte Arts Council continues to support and advance local arts. We just got the umbrella hot off the press on Friday, and so we wanted to, you'll get it in the mail, but we wanted to make sure that you had your copy. And if you just flip and look to the back, you'll see one of the biggest art supporters, our nod to Morris Rowlands. Marilyn Rowlands was one of the, she was very early on a very dedicated member of the Quinte Arts Council. And that is a painting by Elizabeth Dingle. So we have the umbrella. What the role the Quinte Arts Council plays, we distribute the umbrella across Ontario. We provide arts education programming into the schools, and that's starting up again, and we're so happy that the artists are now being able to go back into the schools providing arts education for our children. We put on programming like the Expressions Juried Art Show, the Quinte en Plein Air, the Arts Recognition Awards that happens at the Mayor's Luncheon for the Arts, and I think that Quinte Arts Council has now hosted that luncheon. I think this is our 28th year. So when we look forward to continuing this important relationship with the City of Belleville. We continue to advocate for more arts and culture funding. Yes, we missed the budget this year, but we will continue to prove ourselves and hope to speak to you all about, investing in the arts and culture for the next round of budget talks. What will the city gain by increasing that commitment? We'll gain the opportunity to have these funds matched by new federal and provincial funding. We gain the benefits of innovation and inspiration that artists bring to Belleville, and our art community creates its own jobs and opportunities for many others. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gerald. Thanks for coming today. And again, another excellent publication. I've always been impressed by the quality, and you know, it really represents the QAC very, very well. Colleagues, anyone have any questions or comments they'd like to make to Ms. Gerald on her presentation? Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Chair, thank you for coming again and speaking to us. I just wanted to wish the arts community all the best. It's been a long 2 years with the pandemic, and gradually we can see things are starting to move. And this past weekend, 3 sold-out shows, the Best of Broadway at Belleville Theatre. You know, maximum there I think is 40 or 50 people, but it's sold out. We have stuff happening at the Pinnacle Playhouse. And then tomorrow night, like Bruce Colburn's in town, a Canadian legend. So music, you touched on the cultural exchanges that we have now in our city. We saw the success of the Wally Festival this past October. That's arts, that's culture. So just good luck with this. You mentioned a vibrant community is based on a lot of grassroots art stuff happening, and we have that community, and now we're going to have a chance to really enjoy that, embrace that, because we're coming out of this period. So
Coming out bigger and better.
yeah, continued success. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gerald. You know, again, we really appreciate the partnership with the Quinte Arts Council and for all that you do for our city. You know, we made a deliberate effort as a council that we wanted not just our arts sector to survive, but to be able to be in a position to thrive once we came through the pandemic and this resurgence that we are going to see ahead of us. We've already seen great interest, and it's time now for ourselves to start thinking about venues and how we don't have sufficient venues for all the different artistic expressions that are in our community, and we'll continue to work on that going forward. Thank you for announcing or making reference to the Mayor's Week for the Arts. I want to thank Quinte Arts Council and all of our different agencies for cooperating. I'm excited at the next council meeting on May the 9th. We'll make an announcement of the individual activities. I know that our communications department put out a release today letting the public know what's going to be happening and how they can get tickets to some of these events. But I just wanted to say thank you. And we appreciate everyone coming today, and we appreciate everyone's resilience over the last 2 years. That has been a difficult time for everybody, including our very important artists.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My colleagues, I'm looking for a resolution that the deputation by Janet Gerald of the Quinte Arts Council presenting a video they have created celebrating arts and culture be received. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Have a nice day. We'll move on now to Allison Farrell, the coordinator of the Belleville Community Trust Fund, who will make a presentation to council. Good afternoon, Ms. Farrell. If you just want to push that button so that red light comes on, and welcome.
Welcome. Awesome. So great to see everybody. I don't know we've ever had the opportunity to speak to council. Belleville Community Trust has been around since 1994, so just about 30 years. We provide emergency financial assistance for low-income, at-risk, and vulnerable in the city of Belleville and surrounding area. It was created back in '94 to get rid of duplication of service, okay, so that people could donate to the trust, and we in turn would make sure that those dollars were expedited to the best of our ability. We're an over-the-phone process so that people don't have to take time away from their jobs, that they don't have to go through the sometimes very invasive social services protocol. And a lot of the folks that we deal with, it's a one-off. They never thought they would find themselves in this situation where they couldn't pay their rent, couldn't pay their hydro, couldn't put food on the table, had to cut their medications in half, couldn't get their eyeglasses. An emergency is a really personal thing, and emergencies differ from one client to another. For some people, the emergency, they need gas money to get to work for the next week. For some people, they need a $500 payment on their hydro to stop the threat of disconnection. It goes without saying, I know I'm preaching to the choir, you all know that we have people struggling in this city. ODSP recipients have not received a raise in over 3 years. Food in the last year alone has gone up over 8%. All roads lead to housing. Without housing, it is almost impossible to be a good employee, to be a good parent, to be a contributing member of society. And our emergency department is overwhelmed with people who are stressed out and overwhelmed with just trying to pay their basic monthly bills. So we've been around for a really long time, and I've been doing this job a really long time. And I pride myself that with all of the urgency in the community, that one by one, we put out the small fires so they don't turn into a barn blaze. Okay, we pay those hydro bills, and I must really, really stress that all of our funds are paid directly to where the money is owed. Okay, it goes to Enbridge Gas, it goes to Lexicon Hydro, it goes directly to property management, it goes to Shoppers Drug Mart for their prescriptions. Money is not paid to clients. It also eliminates the stress for them. They're no longer the middleman. I have worked really hard to build working rapport with landlords and providers in this community, and we work with every community partner in the city of Belleville. We receive funding from the United Way, who also provides me with an office space free of charge. We are probably one of the more frugal United Way funded agencies. I have been the only paid staff for over 20 years, was there as a volunteer for the first year, and was absolutely shocked at the need in this city. A single person on Ontario Works receives $751 a month. How is that possible to live on? I have moms that call because they don't have food to send their kids to school with lunches. I pay for a storage unit up on Millennium Parkway because we have a gentleman and his 15-year-old daughter living there. There are so many things that Ontario Works cannot cover. And like I said before, emergencies are personal. So an example, the ICU calls from Belleville Hospital. We have somebody in intensive care. The care provider is disabled, cannot afford the parking. We pay $110, and that person now gets to go visit 30 times. Those are the types of things that we do. They're not big and colorful. We're plugging away behind the scenes, issuing food vouchers, issuing transportation, whether it be coming down here and getting bus tokens or bus passes for folks. I'm a very hands-on girl. My board empowers me to be able to, don't monkey around, let's just get her done. I leave my desk, I drop off food, I take people to where they need to go. Not all the time, but if they can't get there, we're there. And most people really just want an ear. You know, it's pass the buck. Can't help you? Call this person, call this person. People will say to me, if you can't help me, just tell me now, because I don't want to get into it. They don't want to have to tell all of their stuff for me to say sorry. Empathy is huge, compassion is huge, and we're a society that is really lacking in that. And a lot of those phone calls are like, just thanks for listening. Thanks for returning my call. Emergencies don't happen Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. My phone's always with me. I try really hard, if nothing else, just to make that call on Friday and say, don't worry about it, we'll deal with it on Monday. If I don't pay a bill, because maybe they don't qualify, maybe it's not an urgent situation, I work with Belleville Water. I work with the Lexicon. We can get an extension on a disconnect notice to these folks can get into the Ontario Works office or wherever it may be. But it's really, really difficult for folks, and it's embarrassing. And a lot of times people don't ask for help because it's embarrassing. So I'm very quick to tell them I'm one paycheck away from sitting on the other side of the desk. And I've been around the block a few times, and it's my job to empower them. They are allowed to ask for things. And I will advocate on behalf of people as well. So I just want to, I'm not a numbers girl, but I want to give you just a couple of A snapshot. Since we started in '94, $2,072,000 we have paid out in emergency financial assistance. 11,455 applications were approved for emergency assistance, which amounts to 36,000 individuals. And when you average out what we spent and the amount that we approved, it's less than $200 a pop. So $200 is making the difference between people having a roof over their head, having their hydro on, and having food on the table. Because some people just need a $72 bus pass. Some people just need $100 worth of groceries. Some people just need to fill their gas tank. And we're there to make it accessible, not to make it difficult, not to judge, not to condone, and we are hoping that it moves them on to where they need to be. So with that being said, we have doubled our budget in the last couple of years, because it goes without saying, utilities, food, rent, everything is through the roof. Seniors and children have always been and will continue to be a priority. It is very, very important to keep seniors in their homes. So one of the things we do is provide funding for grab bars, toilet seats, transfer benches, anything that will keep them safe and in their homes. There's not a lot of funding for that stuff. Medical issues like prescriptions, dental, everybody is part-time or contracted. There's no benefits. We get calls from the discharge planning nurse because Mr. Smith can't be discharged. They know that he's going to get his medication. And we look after that immediately. It's not a 24-hour, 48-hour process through social services. It's on the spot. So I'm going to leave you today with an email. We paid about a $260 hydro bill. Young single girl, and she writes, "I came home today to the hum of my fridge and I turned on a hall light. I washed my face in warm water and finally sat down with my first cup of tea in 2 weeks and cried. If ever you take a moment to wonder about the impact that you are making on people's lives, think about what it would be like to have a warm shower after 2 weeks of being cold. Think about what it would be like to sit down and read in bed after 2 weeks of having to wait until morning crouched by your window. Think about what it would feel like to be able to finally do a load of dishes and have a friend into your home after being isolated in the dark. My deep thanks to you. You change lives every day." The one thing I know for sure is that most people don't need a lot. We just have a lot of people that need a little bit of help. And with the support of the City of Belleville and all of our other partners, we continue to make sure that those people are where they need to be. And I appreciate your time, because we don't get a chance to come in and speak very often because we're busy doing our thing. And so to be able to do this, it's wonderful. Nice to see you, bearing it.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Farrell, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for coming and talking to us. You know, City Council is familiar with your organization. We have funded you through the Social Infrastructure Fund for the work that you do. And I know that the United Way speaks very highly of your organization, and they feel that you provide an essential, important service. So thank you for that. Colleagues, I see Councillor Thompson and then Councillor McCaw. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure, bearing it.
I've had the pleasure of being at 1 or 2 of your meetings and speak to you. The work that you do in this community so silently amazes me, really. So I congratulate you too. The funding, you talk about United Way, where does the rest of your funding come from? Is it all over?
It is. So we've been very fortunate. We used to always get provincial funding through the CHIPPY program, which is now, it's obsolete. So our main source of funding right now comes from the federal level, from the Reaching Home program. So we were just approved through Hastings County Social Services just at the end of March for the next 4 years, actually. So, or 2 years, sorry, till the end of 2024. United Way had extra funding because of COVID, so we were successful in that funding as well. And we still have our die-hard donations from the community. Belleville Lions is a huge supporter of Belleville Community Trust. Eastminster United Church, The Belleville Connects still make yearly donations, so we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, and that's the point I think I want to make, is that it's just not United Way. There's all these other agencies that are coming forward to support your program. But I got amazed when I went to your meeting of how many people you're helping, that really your agency, I think, is very quiet in the community to do your work. Not that the others don't do good work, but for the publicity, and it was great to see you coming here today to explain to you. So I commend you for your work. I wish you all the best. So what is your budget for this year?
What is our budget for this year?
What's your total?
Well, I mean, it'll be probably the same as last year, about $120,000.
Yeah, and that's my point. $120,000 for the work you do, for $120,000 is amazing what you do. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you,
And
Garner.
continue best of luck.
Thank you. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. And I will echo what my council colleague has had to say. I've heard of community trust, but I know a lot of people that haven't. I've brought the name up. They have no idea who you are and what you do. So I guess my question would be, how do people reach you? How do you get referrals?
Oh, the referrals come from everywhere, Kelly. They come from the hospitals, they come from MDS labs, they come from every social worker, Quintian District Rehab, the Assertive Community Treatment Team. And it goes back to our immediate response. You know, the Assertive Community Treatment Team is dealing with people with mental health and addictions, and we're trying to get them housed. So we can approve a new bed for them right on the spot. So I guess you're saying that people haven't heard of us, it's probably because they haven't been struggling, right? So if you're struggling, you will find me, because somebody will know of me. We've never advertised for the fact that then we get all kinds of calls that we really don't necessarily need, right? Because there will always be people out there that figure that, you know what, I donated to the United Way, or I did this, and you know, and when we were getting the COVID funding, everybody was looking for something, right? So I mean, I have to wean through all of those. So you know, we are on the United Way's website, right, as one of their funded agencies. Garnet can certainly get you hooked up. Janet, who is with the City of Belleville, has been the chair of our board for many years. She jumped on board because she, of course, was getting referrals because people were going to have their water disconnected, right? So, yes, any time I can certainly, you know, give you my contact information afterwards, and I am very, very able to speak to anybody or any group at any time. You know, because we try to be very transparent with our funding. You know, donations are very hard to get, and it's really important. So every dollar that we get, because the United Way actually pays my wages, so that every dollar that we get from, you know, whether it's solicited or unsolicited, is 100% put back into the community.
So for those watching at home then that are struggling, what would your advice be? Who would they contact to get to
They
you?
could certainly give me a call at 613-962-3070 or BellevilleTrust@gmail.com. Or again, they can call the United Way office.
So they can individually reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Does not have to be through a referring
Because
organization?
one of the things that we do, it isn't just about paying money. It's referrals to the programs and the rent subsidies and the empowering to people. Yes, you can call up Hydro and tell them you can't make your payment till Friday. You know, like, people are scared. They don't want to rock the boat. So I'm there to say, hey, yes, you can rock that boat. Right? So it's definitely not always about money. They've got people who have aging parents and they're looking for care for their elderly mother. It's all kinds of questions, just general questions, and to get the help that's needed.
Thank you, and hopefully
Thank
there's
you.
a place maybe on our website that we can offer that
Sure.
phone number as well, or
Yeah.
that email address, so that people do know, who may be watching at home, that you are there.
Absolutely.
Because there are people that do not know you're there, and there are people that are struggling. The working poor are struggling
Working
right
poor
now.
is one of our biggest challenges, right? I mean, and after people pay their bills, one of our biggest requests, to be really honest with you, is for groceries, right? Because once the bills are paid, there's just not, and if you got a 13, 14-year-old boy at home, they got hollow legs. And like when summer comes and they're home, right? And I mean, to me, food is security, right? You might not have a lot, but knowing that you got stuff in the cupboard and in the fridge to make dinner, you know, it's got to be the best feeling. So, you know, if somebody calls and maybe there's something I can't help them with, I'll give them a food voucher because it offsets, right? And somebody has listened to them and acknowledged that they're struggling. And that's really what a lot of them want. They just want to be heard.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Millette.
And Allison, my questions have been answered from my colleagues. I just wanted to say thank you again. And again, it's one of those agencies that's part of the fabric of those under the radar. You know, I'm thinking the Enrichment Center, I'm thinking Not Alone, Team Quinte, all, you know, just great small particles of the fabric that is really the safety net of this community. And thanks just again for everything you do. And thanks for asking those questions, because if people wanted to reach out, I'd like to see that budget go to $240,000 because I'm sure the need is there.
Oh, it is. It
Okay.
truly is. And I really do appreciate
Yeah,
it.
again, thanks. And Janet, thanks for all you do. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, Ms. Farrell, thank you for coming. I remind you, I think we're still open for this year's intake on social infrastructure
It's
grants. So
long gone.
that's
We were-
good.
we're in there, yeah.
You know, we've had very good results from those funds with you, and we're grateful. And God bless you and all of the people that are
We
affiliated with you.
appreciate your
what
kind words. We really do.
Okay,
Thanks
thank you.
again.
My colleagues, I'm looking for a resolution that the deputation by Allison Farrell, coordinator of Belleville Community Trust Fund, providing information to council about the work and mandate of this nonprofit agency now in its 27th year of operation be received. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And now I'd like to call Peter Coy to the podium, please, who is the Vice President of the Quinte Tennis Club, who will make a presentation or deputation to council. Good afternoon, Mr. Coy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councillors, hard-working staff. Thank you very much for paying attention to this proposal today. Really, I was going to start off by saying shocking news about tennis courts, but really the Belleville Trust was the shocking news, that the need is there, and in a rich country like Canada, we have this kind of an issue. But again, I say that to be generous as a city, we have to be successful as a city. And that's really what I want to address today. So surprising news from Tennis Canada was that Canada has one covered court per 50,000 population. That's one covered tennis court per 50,000 population, which is dead last amongst the tennis playing nations. The Czech Republic is number one with one covered court per 4,000 players. And only 2% of municipally operated courts are covered versus 34% of ice rinks and 37% of swimming pools. We have a few things to look at today from Tennis Canada, where they talk about in some fairly interesting snapshots that you probably can't see from your seat, but a very good illustration of how fast tennis is growing, how much it is the growing sport in Canada, and obviously there's some wonderful examples of tennis players of Canadian heritage who have moved on to being in the top 10 in the world, and that's a source of great pride, and it's certainly an inspiration for some new young tennis players. But really, unless you can afford to go to Florida in the winter, you have a real problem trying to become a number one tennis player, where you have to start at age 8 and carry on playing all the time under top coaches. So this delegation is to recommend that Belleville initiates a project for an indoor year-round tennis courts as part of the planning process in addressing the identified Belleville tennis court deficit. The proposed facility, I think it's a powerful statement that Belleville is confident, visionary, and well led by a council that delivers for the present and the future. We're looking for something which is energy efficient, accessible, safe, healthy, beautiful, and a long-lasting legacy. And that's in line with the recent PRMP planning proposal to build at least 10 tennis courts in Belleville over the next 10 years in order to bring the availability up to the national average for public courts. It also addresses the goals of inclusivity, access, opportunity, youth development, coaching, and overall fitness and wellness programs as outlined in the recent Recreation and Parks Plan. And by the way, a study in Copenhagen found that tennis players lived on average 9.7 years longer than non-tennis players. So that's kind of interesting, and you know, that's a long time to continue to pay taxes, just as an aside. So I appreciate that the community support and partnership is important for a recreation facility to be successful. And anything of this scale, it does need a good board. It really needs, you know, a certain number of volunteers, but also it needs to be a business, and it needs to be a successful business. And the Tennis Canada material I've provided outline in great detail how exactly a municipality can assess what they may want to provide and invest in this kind of a facility to make it a profit-making center rather than a cost center. And apparently that's part of their business planning within, I've given out 6 pieces of information, and the last one is this 100-slide presentation, which we can't do today, which talks about every aspect of how a municipality like ours would go about deciding what kind of a facility could be appropriate for the goals of the city. I found that in talking to 65 members by survey of the Quinte Tennis Club, if they would be interested in playing in such a facility, 90% said yes, and the only people who said no were people who always spend the winter in Florida, so the winter isn't a problem for them. So we also had 38 people give very, very positive comments, so I have already, if you like, a core group that would form an executive or a board to work on this. Tennis Canada also has, as part of their business planning, lined up, if we wanted to access it, naming rights on a building which are at $200,000 per structure, and that's available. And we do believe that there is available funding from the province and from the federal government relating to this kind of scale of a sports facility. So I think that this is a proposal where we need a city that continues to develop a bit more in a way of accessible facilities for sport that are accessible to people who don't have a whole lot of money, can't buy all the hockey equipment, you know, for their kids. All you have to do to play tennis is buy a relatively cheap racket and a pair of shoes, maybe. They generally already have the running shoes, and other than that, they can get out and play. And this will be a program open to schools to have time booked, and it will be open to other organizations. For example, disabled tennis is a big Olympic sport, as you know, and we really feel that that should be catered for within this facility. The other thing that Tennis Canada talk about is dual use of courts, that during the winter you can also use these courts for pickleball by playing on half a court, across a court. So that is interesting as pickleball continues to grow. We do have fairly good, I think, pickleball facilities already indoors in the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre, but it's always useful to have a bit more and to have fully used courts. So that's my presentation. I don't know, Peter, did you want to say anything more? Or you on this?
Good evening. So, of course, now he puts me on the spot. But, yeah, I think just in addition to that, I mean, I think it's been well presented in the materials that have been presented to council as well, go into lots of simple detail that make the case. But suffice to say that tennis as a sport is growing at the rate of 35–36% per year. It's a sport that is very well balanced through all ages of the community, from the young to the old. It's shown tremendous health benefits. It's accessible and the likes. But from a business perspective, it's very easy to see that a facility, a world-class facility, in the sports tourism sector could well be something that's very attractive to a city like Belleville, who is already increasing its mix its choice to people moving to this area. So a world-class facility has the opportunity to bring more economy to the region as well. So I just leave it at that, quite simple, but it's an opportunity, I think, to bring another world-class choice to the city of Belleville. Thank you, Peter.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Colleagues, any questions or comments for the deputation? Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming. Colleagues, any questions or comments for the deputation? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. First of all, thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate hearing the message, and when we found out last Thursday that you would be doing a deputation, I did some research on golf. I'm not golf, but sorry, on tennis in Canada. Sorry about that, but tennis in Canada. So the Quinte Tennis Club is celebrating its 73rd anniversary this year. Congratulations, long time.
Thank you.
1949. I too read the stats, the 36% increase in tennis. There's 7,500 tennis courts, warm weather driven here in Canada, so that's about 60% of the year they can use them. My question is, Tennis Canada says 36% increase in people playing tennis in the last 2 years. What is it locally? I understand you have 270 members.
Correct.
And do you have partnerships with, a couple of questions for you. Do you have partnerships with area high schools, like the city high schools? And what are you doing to attract the youth to play? Because your club is not going to grow with 45, 50 plus. They can add with the numbers, but you really are, I'm sure, driving this for the youth in the community. So what staples do you have in place? It's 36% nationally, according to Tennis Canada. What are the stats locally? Thank you.
Thank you. We are actually limited to the number of members that we can accept, and that's been around about 275 to 300. But at 300, you just about run through the availability of the courts based on people playing a couple of times a week. So that court availability, plus because the courts currently are outdoor and they don't drain well, we lose a lot of days to rain. And obviously, as soon as it gets cold, we only have 5 months of the year when we can utilize them. However, there are kids camps that we run to encourage youth involvement. And as much as possible, we do try to see if we can bring new people into the sport. And this year, I know that already, as soon as we posted our membership form on the website, people started signing up, new people. So I think there is quite a demand. I'll give you some better numbers after we have our registration completed at the end of May probably. But I'd be very happy to report back to you. I did put in a new system to manage membership and renewal, so that's made life a whole lot easier. Sometimes we have family memberships right now, and that means that we can have certainly one kind of, it looks like there's one person, but in fact there's 4 people who've signed up, that kind of thing, and we've managed to separate those out, so we will be able to tell you after we have our registration completed exactly how many people and how does that compare with last year. But we are just about at the limit at the moment of how many people we can accept into the club itself, and we feel that a new facility is going to be an encouragement to a lot of people to learn the sport, and particularly because if it is concentrated into, say, a 4-court facility or a 6-court facility, that will mean we'll be able to have coaches locally who are working out of that kind of a facility. If it's a 6-court facility, Tennis Canada will put tournaments in here, which will also add to the tourism element. And this is a very big part of, the amount of tourism related to tennis is quite strong. People follow their particular players around the world, it seems. So I do feel that there is a very good opportunity here to do something which will bring some equality to the ability of a young person to become a leading tennis player by providing these year-round facilities so that they don't have to get shipped off to some academy in Florida every year, which must be very, very disruptive for a 14, 15-year-old, I think. So I think this is something which is going to be a defining facility for Belleville, and particularly in where we're placed between Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. There aren't a whole lot of indoor facilities, as we've already said. Very few facilities are indoors in Canada. So this is going to be a distinctive facility that I think will really act as an incentive for people with family interested in tennis to want to be in this area.
Okay.
You had
Thank
a
you.
second question, or was that?
That was very good. No, I know he understood that. Anyone else? All right, well, Mr. Coy, thank you. You know, I know we see this happen in our country when we have success on the international level, and I'm thinking most recently of Bianca Andreescu and Leila Fernandez. It drives so many young people in particular to sport. We're going to see a huge increase next year on soccer now that Canada's qualified for the World Cup, and this happens. And municipalities are sometimes always playing catch up because we can't anticipate where we'll have that success. You know, we're in a situation where we have very few tennis courts in the city, and we're really proud of the fact that we'll be constructing some this summer, and we'll continue to have more in the future. I think I can speak on behalf of everybody and say we're interested in your suggestion. I invite you to go back and look at service clubs and other organizations and do some work on the funding side of it, because right now, with all the demands on us, it's very difficult for us to contemplate a situation in which we would provide this facility. However, there are a lot of creative ways to be able to see something like that. So I would encourage you to go back and do that. And I know that council, for the remainder of this term, and the new council would love to see some progress on that and perhaps a proposal.
Thank you very much. I know that Tennis Canada is very, very keen on a Belleville location, so we'll see what they can drum up from events.
Good. Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for coming, and thanks to Mr. Malone as well for his additional comments. Colleagues, the deputation by Peter Coy, Vice President of Quinte Tennis Club, regarding the potential to develop an indoor tennis facility in the city as part of the recently approved sports facilities plan, be received. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor McCaw. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So, under correspondence, you have on your desks a letter from Coventry Connections Incorporated that operates Central Taxi, and I'm looking for a resolution to receive the correspondence and refer it to staff for a report at the May 9th council meeting. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Alsop. So again, we're going to receive this letter, we're going to receive it, refer it to staff, and the expectation is that a report will come back to us at the May 9th meeting. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll now move to Committee of the Whole. I'm looking for a resolution that Council rise and go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the Chair. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. We'll move on to reports, where the agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from Council, starting with 8A1, the 2022 Municipal Election Use of Corporate Resources for Election Purposes Policy. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services, City Clerk's Report, number DCS 2022-09, Council approved the Use of Corporate Resources for Election Purposes Policy. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McCaw and Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the City Clerk. This is a revision policy, if I'm reading that correctly. It wasn't clear what the revisions were in the policy, so I'm just looking to have those highlighted, please.
Mr. McDonald?
Through the chair, Councillor Carr, very few. There was an amendment to the city's policy related to use of corporate resources, Queen's Park and Wellness Center, for instance, signage and rooms. Court decision where a member at a different level of government took policy in a larger municipality to court, challenged it and was successful. It caused most municipalities to amend their policy, challenge on freedom of speech. So we amended the policy resources for advertising at facilities such as the Queen's Park and Wellness Center, so long as the that was kind of standalone, so it's all
Anyone else on this item? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8A2, Mineral Road and Maitland Drive connection charges, and the resolution is that a notice be issued to the owner of each and every lot serviced by the Waterworks and Sanitary Sewer Works on Mineral Road and Maitland Drive that has not been connected to the municipal services, advising that connection charges are payable and that private service connections are required in accordance with the provisions of Bylaw 2019-1A3, and that council authorizes the 2020 connection charge rate for the notice to be issued pursuant to Bylaw 2019-183. Moved by Councillor Sanderson, second by Councillor Alsop. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thompson, we'll start with you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So with this situation now, anybody that's not hooked up, is it my understanding they will be mandatory for them to be hooked up at these rates that are listed?
All right, I'm going to ask Director Ashton if he can to provide some information on that.
Yeah, so they'll have two options. One, they can pay, or two, they can make installment payments over 10 years. So that's within the notice that'll be issued. And then they'll also have 10 years to connect on the private side to the municipal services as well.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you. I'd like a recorded vote on this motion, please. I'm not going to support the motion. I didn't support the bylaw in 2019. I know there's only four residential properties approximately on this portion of Maitland Drive, but it's not lost on me that the infrastructure work that was completed on there was the purpose of the urban growth beyond it. And when the services go by, you know, a bit of a misnomer in that there's a connection charge. The report's clear, the bylaw's clear. It's a cost recovery charge for the municipality running that infrastructure across the frontage of city property, but along the private residence. As was alluded to by the director, there are private service connections that are required. And so could you imagine putting yourself in that position where you built a house in the 1950s, and I would argue there's a couple there, and predominantly rural, obviously, area there, and growth has occurred, but then being forced then to cost recover that fee, but then the private connections. So I've talked with a couple plumbers who do this line of work, and you have to decommission your well and cap it. You have to decommission your septic system, fill it with sand, the tank, and then connect. The difficulty is with a lot of these rural connections is your well is predominantly in the front of your house, your septic system in the back of your house. So your sewer connection now will be in the back of your home. So therefore, when you talk about the cost per foot to connect, and then when you talk about the lot, which is a lot different than a postage stamp subdivision lot, the costs continue to rise. It's approximately $10,000 that the resident in a home built in the 50s is going to now have to pay either within 90 days or installments over 10 years. So the contractor's going to want to be paid up front. And so not only is it the cost recovery for a service going by on city property, but it's the connection and then the incurring of the expenses happening on private property, coupled with the fact that there's now a monthly bill. If you've got a good well and a good septic, why would you want any of that? It's not lost on me too that when we talk about the housing crisis and things of that nature, we have seniors that are holding on to their homes, and we have seniors tax credits for the purpose of trying to offer some relief. And to impose a connection charge, to impose then private contract work that has to be done to the tune of $10,000 approximately, you're asking people now to pay almost $20,000 to connect to then get a monthly bill. And I didn't oppose the bylaw then, so therefore, at a principle, I can't support this now. Again, it's not lost onto me whether it's a senior, it's a young family who's trying to make ends meet, maybe save for their kids' future. They should have a choice to connect. It's one thing if it's a new development and all your services are plugged in and you get one bill when you buy your house. It's a completely different story when you've maybe built your house in 1970 and you've lived there your entire life. And yes, things are growing around you and what have you. But because that infrastructure goes on municipal property across the front of your house, and now we're obligating you to pay for that, to me, it certainly is an imposition. It's a big imposition. And I don't think it's fair or reasonable. People should have a choice. I look at Enbridge Gas, for example. Enbridge Gas runs gas lines all over our municipality. There is no obligation to connect. You could choose to burn oil, you can choose to burn propane, you can come up with different ways. If you choose to connect, great, and there is a charge, and you will pay for that, and then you'll pay for the ongoing service that's coupled with that. But to me, in pre-existing areas that are on private systems that function fine, that because growth occurs around it doesn't mean that we should be imposing this on people. So I know that kind of deviates a little bit off of the topic because I'm talking about the bylaw, but the bylaw does pertain to this particular motion. So at a principle, I didn't support the bylaw. I can't support the action today. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ashton, can you tell me if we're the first municipality to come up with a connection bylaw of this type?
I would not know exactly off the top of my head, and I wasn't involved with the creation of this bylaw, but I would assume the answer is no, but I'd have to double check those answers.
I think CEO Bove in his previous role as Director Bove would understand that. But I guess we're not an outlier in the sense that we have a municipal bylaw that requires property owners to connect as services are run in their neighborhoods. Would that be accurate?
To the chair, yes, that's pretty common practice across Ontario.
And can you, Mr. Bove, you're familiar with this, so I think it's important that we understand the facts of the situation. So why do municipalities come up with these bylaws that require property owners to connect to municipal services?
Well, typically there are a few reasons. In many cases, it's because wells may be failing and there's a need to supply potable water to an area. So a municipality may install water mains to bring municipal water. There could be issues with septic tanks and previous development patterns putting lots too close together, and the septic systems contribute to contamination of wells. And as we're seeing with Maitland Mineral Road, it's really growth related, and it's pretty standard to have growth, and those benefiting from that growth pay the cost of the services that are brought to them.
All right, thank you. Well, I recall going to a municipal conference where discussion about infrastructure and servicing came up, and one of the factors about where they talked about whether people had options to connect or whether they were required to deals with the liability the municipality faces when you have failing wells, you have failing septic tanks, you have contamination. Individuals who chose not to connect are the first ones to now launch into litigation against the municipality, saying that you had a duty to protect us to make sure that we were healthy and we had all these issues. I think really the question here is whether you want to live in the city or not. We obviously look at development moving forward. We have to have orderly development. I understand that people may have wanted to purchased and built their homes a long time ago, but a lot has changed, and we now are in a situation where we're running services to these new areas. We go by these existing homeowners. We have a very reasonable connection bylaw. We debated this in 2019. We made a decision to move forward, and the debate centered around the fact that we have a very generous 10-year opportunity if people can't afford it. And I can throw out numbers as well in terms of how much it's going to cost to connect or how much it's not going to cost to connect. But, again, living in a municipality isn't like going to the buffet at the buffet garden where you get to pick and choose only the things you want. We can't live in a city where we have haphazard development, where we can't be able to financially plan the extensions of services to meet the needs of the city when we don't have any idea of who's going to connect or whatnot. So thanks for that information, Director Bove. I'll certainly be supporting the resolution as I did in 2019. Anyone else? Councillor McCaw, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, through you. And I would argue that this is something that isn't new. In the years I sold real estate, which was 25 years of it, we would see this all the time. And one of the most common places I recall seeing it was in the Montrose subdivision when they connected to municipal water. It was the same thing. You pay it up front or you pay it in installments. Living there, I lived there myself personally at one point in time, and I appreciated the fact it had municipal water. Another issue becomes septic systems. Septic systems aren't inexpensive to replace. I've heard reports up $30,000 to $50,000 to replace a septic system, which is really, a municipal hookup is a small price to pay when you look at a simple septic system. And we're not even talking about a well. Then you get to wells, where septic systems are too close to them, and all of a sudden now you're in a huge water filtration system because you have E. coli, all of these bacterias that are coming into your water system. So, quite honestly, this is no big surprise. I accept this. This is what it costs to live in a municipality. I don't find the fees outrageous to connect. I think they're actually quite reasonable compared to other municipalities. And, I again will stress, a lot of these older homes built in maybe 1950, they didn't have the regulations that we have today where your well has to be so far from a septic system. And, we have seen lots of homes that have faced this where the water is completely, even with filtration, you're afraid to drink it. So I would completely support this. Again, if we're only talking 3 or 4 homes, I'm not even sure what the issue is, so I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting it, and I think if there are 3 homes involved, that's probably all there is. So a question through you to Director Ashton. Have we received any complaints or pushback from any of the residents along Maitland? There are no residents, of course, on Mineral.
I'm not aware of any complaints.
Okay, thank you.
I do know that, talking to staff earlier, there are some issues with wells, water levels in the wells is the only feedback I've received from staff.
Yeah, so it'll probably be welcomed by the residents that are there. I can tell you that I've talked to a couple business owners or business operators, I should say, along Parks Drive. And, there's an area that would love to have both water and wastewater services. And, for reasons that are well understood by staff, we're not able to do that. So I think it's a good news story. I don't know why anybody would paint that as negative, and I'll support it.
Right. Anyone else on this? Okay, Councillor Carr, will let you speak a second time, then I'm going to call the question.
Okay, thank you. Just a question through to CEO Bove. Mr. Bove, it was suggested, and so I'd like your thoughts, and I'll share mine. Who's responsible? Is the municipality responsible from a liability perspective if a private citizen's or private owner's well or septic fails in any way?
Through the chair to Councillor Carr. Well, homeowners historically have tried to put that liability on municipalities by arguing that, the salt we put on the road contaminates the well, or the sewage from a septic system on a neighbor's lot contaminated their well because the city didn't have services. Those are specific instances that I know have come up in certain cases, but as a general rule, no, the city shouldn't be liable for an issue with the well or septic if we didn't cause it.
Okay, and certainly, and I think that's important because the municipality's liability stops at the private homeowner, so that needs to be clear in that property. And so if a well is contaminating, or a septic system is contaminating another well, then that's civil matter. No different than what we hear from time to time where somebody fills in a swale on a piece of property, and if there's not a covenant in there, then the one neighbor will have to go to civil court to take the other neighbor to say, you can't fill in your swale, you've got to fix it. So we don't have liability. So putting in the services is not eliminating the liability because we don't have it to begin with. The second thing is that just, and I do have experience on well and septic. I have private services. it's important as a private homeowner to maintain your home. If your roof leaks, you fix it. If your water quality is no good, you get a filter, you get a UV light, you get your septic system pumped regularly, you maybe nudge your neighbors along to pump as well. That's just the way it is. All I'm saying here is people should have a choice. That's it. It's not a negative spin. Simply people should have the choice to whether they want to incur the expense. And I don't think that's unreasonable. And so that's where my argument is. I understand that could very well be that the 4 or 5 homes on this street have negative water and so therefore want the services. As far as have we got any negative comments, well, the resolution on the floor today is to provide that exact notice. So if this is passed today, they're all going to get a letter, every property owner, to say, guess what? You've got city services running through by your property now. You have to hook up. And so maybe we won't get anything. Maybe everybody there will be happy and need it because maybe they have poor water or their septic system is failing, and this may be a better cost option. It's just simply about choice. Thank you.
Yeah. Director McDonald, just in terms of the process, so we passed a bylaw in 2019, and the notice provision now is to execute the bylaw that was passed in 2019, which was the connection requirements. Would that be accurate? So we passed the policy, and now what you're asking us to do today is to implement the policy. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but basically we made the decision in 2019 with bylaw 2019-183 that we would have a connection charges and a private service connection requirement in the city of Belleville, not just in this area, but in all areas where services are going. What's happening before us today is we're implementing, and this is the step in the implementation process. Okay. All right, so Councillor Carr has asked for a recorded vote on this.
Point of order?
Yes.
Yeah, just if I could on that question, the recommendation on the floor is that a notice be issued. So the bylaw is passed, but the motion here today is to provide each property owner with notice as the provision of the bylaw.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Councillor Carr. I don't even understand why we have this before us. If we've already approved it, staff should be issuing it automatically without coming to council for direction on it. But nevertheless, it's here, and we're going to vote on it now.
So my point of order is that this is in order in terms of council has to approve to issue a notice when there's new work completed as per the bylaw.
Let me ask, see if CO Bove recalls. Again,
I've got the bylaw here, but I just need to
where
find
does it say? Where does it say on there about the notice provisions? Because I know this bylaw isn't restricted to the street. Like this bylaw affects citywide. So.
Correct. Okay, if I could.
Yeah, please.
So section 4 says when the city determines it is advisable to impose the applicable connection charge, the city shall issue a notice to the owner of each and every lot serviced or capable of being issued service with the waterworks and sanitary service as per the bylaw.
Right. So I would state actually that this motion is out of order because it's not our requirement as a council to do it. We've set the policy. Staff are to implement it, and this is part of that implementation process. So I'm just going to confer with Mr. McDonald for one quick moment. Okay, all right, thank you. So, a little more information, just the reason why it's before us is that we passed the bylaw in 2019, and then with the advent of this little thing called COVID-19 that affected the whole world, we paused that process. City staff paused the process. We did a number of actions to help with the cost of COVID, including we paused the process of going ahead with the connections. So that means that staff have the responsibility to they're now notifying us, it really shouldn't be in this section of the agenda. It should be more a report to advise us they're proceeding. It does not require a decision of council because we've already made the decision. So the motion that's right now before us is out of order. I'm ruling it out of order. It is administrative and staff will implement it. And our apologies because I should have caught this during agenda setting. This should have come as a report for information rather than for action. So I appreciate everybody's cooperation. We've had good discussion, and staff will go ahead and issue the notices. So we'll move to 8A3, which is the City of Belleville Transportation Committee, and the resolution is that council approve the recommendations of the Transportation Committee for those items outlined in the Deputy City Clerk Report Number DCC 2022-03. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Councillor Thompson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. The reason this is in front of us, it's been brought up at the Transportation Committee, and because we don't have any really safety crossings on those two bridges for pedestrians or for bike lanes, and as soon as we enter that zone, and where it's normally 50 on the city side, we're trying to slow the traffic down because we don't have any really safety accessibility spots to walk across or bike across. So we're going to apply to the government to see if they will allow us to reduce the speed limit on the overpasses for the safety reasons.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Anyone else on this? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, if I could, and Councillor Thompson chairs the committee, and thank you for your guidance. I'd like to thank community member Howard Pulver,
Yes.
who raised this particular issue in discussion. And you know, it's long been said that MTO doesn't want any pedestrian use on those overpasses, but the reality is that it occurs. And Highway 62 and 37 are known to be a predominantly speedway. They are OPP jurisdiction. I don't know how much patrolling gets done by the OPP out of Central Hastings. I would argue probably not a lot. And so as a result, there tends to be a lot of speeding. When you start mixing in pedestrians that are using the unsafe overpass for crossing, which happens on a regular basis, you know, the Transportation Committee felt it was necessary to bring this recommendation forward. Hopefully MTO will be receptive. I know they have plans and grand plans for expansion, and they put out a nice glossy release not too long ago about the overpasses and the 401 expansion and even the East Arterial Road. But until there's money committed to it, it's just a nice plan. And so we have to continue to press for pedestrian and active safety as much as we possibly can. And so I think this is a reasonable request. Thank you.
Anyone else on this? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A4, Warming Center Operation for Winter 2022-2023. And the resolution is that pursuant to CAO Report Number CAO 2022-03, the Council of the City of Belleville supports the operation of a warming center by the County of Hastings for the winter of 2022-2023 in the City of Belleville. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Questions and comments on this? Councillor Thompson, we'll start with you.
Just one quick question, Your Worship. In the report, it says that the city is working with the county, which is wonderful, and all the other municipalities will. Who is the city rep, or have we appointed somebody? I presume we have. Who's the city rep on that particular committee?
I don't think they're striking a committee. What they'll work with the city to identify locations.
Yeah.
So just to back up for everyone watching, the county has received funding from
Yes.
the federal and provincial governments so that they can operate the emergency overnight warming center again this winter as they did last winter. Prior to that, we were the first council in the history of the City of Belleville to operate an emergency warming center, and the County of Hastings now through our Health and Human Services Committee is operating it. They require an endorsement from council to do it again for next winter, and that is what the resolution is now. They've also asked us, as part of their request, is that by the end of June, so in a couple months, that we notify them of a location. And I will speak to that as soon as we finish with this resolution. I will speak to that. But that's sort of where we're at. I don't envision that there's a committee that will be working other than our representatives already on the Health and Human Services Committee.
And that explains basically what I was, it states in here that the city will be working with the Hastings County to come up with a location or for next year. And it's wonderful that we're doing it. We know it's a dire need for it. It's bigger every year. And it has to be someplace that's stable and accessible. And it was just important that I get to the public that there is somebody or there a group of people that are working towards getting that location in the city of Belleville.
Yeah. So if we pass this resolution, Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
we will for sure have one, again, operated by Hastings County. And then we'll keep working on that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I have Councillor Kelly next and then Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I just wanted to, not everybody has the same information we have, and I'd like to make this public today for those watching, and we'll follow up with notes later. Bridge Street United Church has advised city that they will not be hosting the warming center for the upcoming winter. So I want to thank Steve Van Hoof and the team at Bridge Street United Church, also Christy Reeve with Hastings Prince Edward Public Health, and all the volunteers that made Bridge Street United Church a home for those experiencing homelessness. So thank you for your work. And June 30th is the date that the city and Hastings County will have a home announced for the upcoming late fall and winter months. So we patiently wait to see where that might be in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Sanderson, I've got you next.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I didn't know whether to bring it up here or under new business, but it seems to make sense to bring it up here. You touched on the fact that, it was this council that opened up the emergency warming center. And since the transition to Hastings County, and I'm sure we'll find a location, it's actually transitioned more from emergency to actually a warming center. And I think the representatives on the committee think of it in that way. So we've had a number of discussions, and I just want to share some information about, even in this chamber, about reducing the temperature threshold from the -10. And at our Hastings Community Human Services Committee meeting on the 13th, they shared some information with us that the 3 locations currently running, the operating cost is $355,000. So they've got a budget available of $378,000, so we're actually $22,000 to the good. And that ran for 84 days last winter at the temperature of -10. If they were to run it every night, it would be 106 evenings, and the cost for that would be $428,000. And again, we've got an available budget of $378, so it would create a shortfall of $51,000. Now, the reason I bring it up is they also mentioned that the province had given them additional funding called the Homelessness Prevention Program. So they've actually been given $282,000. And the question was asked at the meeting whether we might be able to, if we chose to keep it open for the 106 days, then we wouldn't have to worry about the temperature, whether we would be able to utilize that funding to fund it should the committee decide to go in that direction. So they're taking it under advisement, and they will bring that back to the committee at our next meeting. But I fully expect that we're going to have a more robust warming center this year, just once we identify the location. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, and I'll pose the question and see who wants to respond from the committee. So if we determine a location for the city of Belleville by June 30th, what is Hastings County saying in terms of the timeline to get agreements in place and all the rest of that bureaucratic work that needs to be completed? What are they projecting in terms of a time frame? I know, we're all aware as last winter there was scrambling into January, and there was, is there a little bit are they a little bit more cognizant of the timeline and have everything in place well in advance?
I'll ask Councillor Alsop if he wants to just answer Councillor Carr's question.
Yes, and I think that that's the reason why that deadline has been imposed, the June 30th, because that allows them plenty of time to get everything in line for the winter season, and so that is the intention of the June 30th deadline. And to the point that Councillor Sanderson was making, there was a fair amount of support at that committee level for operating the shelter on an every night basis, which is something that I've been very focused on from the beginning, so very encouraged to see that.
Good. I would just remind everybody that actually Hastings County agreed to operate the warming center before June of 2021, and we still had the problems at the end of the year to get it going on time. However, I think our experience in this past start will solve it going forward. There's two items I'd like to address before I call the question on the questioner. First of all, it's the issue of the location, and I echo Councillor Kelly's comments, the thanking everybody at Bridge Street for operating not just the emergency warming center or the overnight warming center, but also the programs during the day. And we know the huge amount of stress that they experienced this year has been overwhelming, what they have been dealing with, and I certainly appreciate what they provided this year and what they will continue to provide in the future for programs, but I appreciate that they wish not to provide the service of the overnight warming center. So that puts us in a situation where we need a location, and so I believe it's appropriate for us to put a call out to the community. There has been a lot of discussion about people who would do that. There's funding available from Hastings County to compensate a property owner for having this facility, and the call should go out for us tonight that we are looking for locations, and anyone that has a suggestion can contact the fire chief. Chief Belair is the head of our emergency services, and so this is her responsibility. But to let the fire chief know if you have an appropriate facility, a building, a structure that can house the 2022-2023 emergency warming center. The second comes to the issue that Councillor Sanderson discussed regarding the temperature threshold moving next year, and I really appreciate the fact that there's been some discussion. But I think we've got to do a little bit more if we're interested in lowering the temperature from negative 10 degrees to 0. And what I propose is that we should amend the motion and say that we'll allocate up to $25,000 from the Social Infrastructure Fund to enable the center to run all winter long. And the reason for my rationale on that is that's approximately half of what the full Hastings County cost would be. I think it's reasonable for us to cover half and the other municipalities to cover their half of it. It also ensures that if Hastings County is able to find the resources, that we have it. But we have a call right now out for funding from the Social Infrastructure Fund, and it's always oversubscribed, meaning that if we do not allocate these funds now and reserve them, they will be gone by another agency. And so, if Hastings County should find the resources, then that money comes back into the Social Infrastructure Fund, and we can use it again next year. But as you know, the challenge is if we don't have a funding source and then we have an expense down the line, it becomes more difficult. So the mover and seconder of the resolution was Councillor Alsop and Councillor Sanderson. If you would agree to amend your motion to add on, and that up to $25,000 from the Social Infrastructure Fund be made available to allow, I'm not sure what the wording would be, all winter or nightly, to allow for nightly operation, I would appreciate that. So I see them both nodding their heads. So we have the amended motion on the floor. Does anyone have anything else they want to discuss on this? So I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we've stepped up for next year to have it be a nightly operation. And secondly, we put the call out to the community for landowners or property owners who have a facility that will be appropriate for this. More information is available through the chief of our fire department, Fire Chief Belair, and we will make a decision by the end of June with respect to the recommendation to the county for location. Thank you, everybody. 8A5, Cultural Heritage Designation under the Ontario Heritage Act for 217 Pinnacle Street, Belleville, Ontario, And the resolution is that City Council state its intention to designate the property at 217 Pinnacle Street under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act in accordance with the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value attached as Attachment D to the report dated April 25th, 2022 from the Principal Planner, and that if there are no objections to the designation, City Council authorize the City Clerk to introduce the bylaw in Council designating the property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I'd like to get this on the floor, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Alsap. And my colleagues, I'd like to invite Mr. Sook Thind to the podium. Thank you very much, Mr. Thind, first of all, for your patience. Sometimes we discuss some things, so we appreciate you coming here. I'd like to invite you as the new property owner and the representative of the new property owner to present your concept to council, to talk a little bit about what you plan on doing on that site, and any comments you have regarding the report from the policy planner about the historical designation. Council, this property is listed, as in the report, it's listed, it's not designated. It's listed currently, and the developers have filed a demolition permit to allow them to demolish the structure as part of the overall development, and I wanted to invite them here to present to council. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, city staff, and residents that are here. My name is Kvail Thind, and I represent GTR Consulting Inc., the developer who's purchased the lot. I'd like to present what we plan on doing with the development and discuss what was found in the Cultural Heritage Impact Assessment and why we feel that it would be beneficial for the City of Belleville to continue to allow us to continue with our development. So just to give you some insight on our proposed building, this is at the corner of Bridge Street and Pinnacle Street, right next to Bridge Street United Church, which we were just speaking about. This is a combination of 211 Pinnacle Street, which has sat vacant for quite some time in the downtown area, as well as 217 Pinnacle Street, which is to the north of that lot. We know it's been the intention of the City of Belleville and developers before us to develop this land, but due to certain constraints, they have not been able to do so as of yet. The development that we plan on creating will have 108 residential units. It'll be a mix of 1 to 3 bedroom units, including 1+10, 2+10 units, providing a variety of units for potential residents, as well as a good mix of space. Some units will be smaller, some units will be larger. It will be based on the demand of the community. In addition, since this is a C2 zoned lot, we plan on developing 12,000 square feet of commercial space, which is encapsulated in 12 commercial units located on the ground floor, as well as several amenities for residents, including a gym, a party room, a multi-purpose room, and outdoor patio space. So the surrounding area of these lots, as most of you know, is a mix of commercial, institutional, and residential form buildings. And the building in question at 217 Pinnacle Street is one of the few remaining residential form buildings on Pinnacle Street. And the site in question is ideal for a development like this, which is a high-density development due to its proximity to the Robert E. Leducier Transit Center, as well as the Belleville Public Library, being walking distance to these two sites. In addition, there's a number of local restaurants in the area. There's banks, City Hall. In fact, I walked from the site to City Hall earlier today, and commerce centers to provide the employment as well to the residents of the future development. However, one thing we did note in this area specifically is that there is a lack of high-density residences. And this is a glaring issue, I feel, not only in Belleville, but across Ontario right now. As we're seeing, we're in the midst of a housing crisis that has only gotten worse over the last few years. And I understand that our premier and municipalities across the province are now taking the initiative to start to expand development in order to meet the needs of the residents of Ontario. So Originally, we purchased 211 Pinnacle Street, and we were going to develop solely on that site. In fact, the developers previous to us at that site had a proposed development as well. But upon review of their plan, and once we developed our own plan, we were met with several constraints where we felt that it would be necessary for us to purchase a lot to the north and expand the development in order to avoid these issues. Namely, there's an easement currently between the properties, between 211 and 217 Pinnacle Street. 217 Pinnacle Street uses that easement for access to the property. So it is vital to the building for that easement to continue. This proves challenging for us because in our proposed development, we were required to excavate the complete lot to provide underground parking for the residents of the building. And in doing so, we would not be able to adhere to the easement that has already been established. Furthermore, there are support pillars on the property of 217 Pinnacle Street, which are very close to the lot line, which again provides further construction challenges that we would like to avoid. Again, safety is tantamount in this type of project, and we want to mitigate risk wherever we can. Lastly, for our development, in order to establish a fire route, which again is absolutely necessary for the safety of the site, we would require to go through the lot at 217 Pinnacle Street as it currently stands. And again, so to establish underground parking, in our previous development, we were already going into the easement, but with the new development, we would like to excavate both lots. So we have discussed with city staff different possibilities of trying to maintain that structure, but in all likelihood for us to continue with this development, we would need to use both lots to successfully do so. The property in question, I'm sure most of you have driven by, walked by. It is quite close to City Hall. Is pictured above. As you can see, it encapsulates an arts and crafts style development characteristic of the 20th century, which is noted in the Cultural Heritage Impact Assessment. Most strikingly in that report, we were made aware of the historical or associative value that was predominantly surrounding the former resident of the site, George and Hannah Tickle, who Mr. Tickle was a prominent businessman during the 1800s and in fact was mayor of Belleville for some time. It is important to note though that he did not occupy this house specifically. He occupied a previous structure that was demolished and then this building was rebuilt. So it seems like there is quite significance to the lot itself, and the historical angle may be more significant, again, to the lot as opposed to the structure. It was identified as a landmark building as part of a large project by the city of Belleville. We would believe that, based on its history, is why it was designated as a landmark building. And as I mentioned previously, it is a representative of 20th century arts and crafts style architecture. It's also important to note that there have been alterations as well to the exterior of this building that have diminished some of the qualities that allow it to be representative of the 20th century arts and crafts style. But again, there is merit to its architecture. We definitely have tried to accommodate to keep this structure as is. However, it does not seem like it's feasible for us without expanding the project to the two lots. So what we propose in order to preserve the history of this site is a form of commemoration. We understand that it has a historical value, and we want to memorialize the history there. And it doesn't stop at just Mayor Tickle and other historical figures. There are doctors that have practiced out of that facility for some time. We would like to create a historical record that people can actually visit. As it currently stands, there is no you know, public access to this information, really. From the research we did prior to this impact assessment being done, many people were not really aware of the significance of this site. So we want to provide a way for the residents of Belleville to appreciate the rich history. Again, at this phase, we're open to working with city staff and council as well to appropriately do so. We propose, we have a ground floor multi-purpose room planned for the site, and we would like to memorialize the history in that room, in addition to any number of benches, plaques, or other memorial items that can be added to the site plan as well. Furthermore, as it was stated, it was used as a medical facility for quite some time. Currently, there's a physiotherapy clinic there. What we propose to do is expand the commercial space in the downtown area to allow for the continuance of medical practices in that site. We see the synergy between other medical facilities along Pinnacle Street, as well as the proximity to the hospital, making it an ideal source to continue that tradition of medical facilities being present between those two sites. A potential idea we've also had to preserve the actual building would be to relocate that building. We're open to, you know, whatever it takes, again, to be able to preserve where we can and also meet the needs of Ontarians moving forward. So yeah, that's what we have planned, and I would appreciate the opportunity you guys gave me, and I'm open to any questions.
Great, thank you. Can I ask you to go back to one of the earlier slides with
Sure.
the elevations, what the structure would look like again? Just, right, perfect, thank you. So that, and again, you said that is 7 stories?
Yes, it's 7 stories.
With
6
the ground-
stories are, there's 5 stories of the same residential layouts. The 7th story has some larger units, and it has some building amenities. And then the main floor would be strictly commercial,
okay.
as well as the multipurpose room that I stated earlier.
Thank you, good. Colleagues, Councillor McCaw, and then Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, through you.
You can sit, we're in committee of the whole, so I know this is a little unusual how we're handling it,
okay.
but this was the best way to sort of figure out
Sure.
how to deal with it.
Thank you. Your proposal's welcome here. We need homes. Couple of things, a couple of questions and a couple of comments maybe. Is this going to be an age-restricted property? So is it going to be geared to 55 plus, or is it open to all age ranges?
It'll be open to all age ranges because of its location in downtown Belleville and its proximity to commerce and yeah, the nightlife in Belleville as well. It seems like an ideal situation for people of all ages to you know, occupy.
Okay, and this may be premature, but it's always a question I get when new units are being built, is the affordability.
Yes.
Is there any thought to, maybe it's too soon for you to tell me this, but to a range of affordability?
Yeah, we want to be as competitive as possible in terms of price. It is difficult at this time to say. We're sort of at a point now where we need to finalize how we're going to proceed, and that's why we're here today. So once we have that insight, we'll be able to make a more informed decision and then provide information to the public about pricing as well. But again, it is our emphasis to provide the City of Belleville and its residents with affordable options. We've seen the expansion of single-family homes in Belleville quite a bit, and we see that they're starting to be priced out for many people. So we're trying to provide another option for people to be able to buy a home, have something for themselves, but again, at an affordable price. So that's specifically why we chose the City of Belleville and this site to develop such a development.
And if I might just further, and if I understand you correctly,
Yes.
The previous owners of the property had planned a development as well, but it sounds as though they may have been restricted in the same way you are with this building.
Yes.
If I'm understanding you correctly?
Yes. There are many factors on why they you know, chose not to proceed. I can't speculate on their decision, but we purchased the plan as well from them, and upon further evaluation of that plan, there were some feasibility issues we had, specifically instead of excavating as we did on a greater area, they were excavating 2 levels down. However, there are geological issues that would make that quite difficult. Namely, there's a large rock that would need to be removed. However, blasting is not available on that site, again, to its proximity to the churches. So that was one of the reasons where we saw that the plan was not feasible. So we try to amend it to be able to avoid those issues of feasibility and provide the density that we're looking for.
Okay, and just lastly, I don't want to tie it up, just a couple of comments here. I feel as though the need for homes here, like the benefit of that outweighs the significance, in my opinion. And I'm sure other people won't agree with me here, but we're having some real issues with housing here. So, as I said, this is welcome. The only thing I would ask, and I'm not sure who to ask this question to, what is the possibility of a restrictive covenant limiting short-term accommodations within those units? I think if we're going, I mean, it's a prime area, but it's also a prime area for STAs. And I wonder if that is something that we have the ability to restrict. And I don't know who can answer that.
Councillor McCaw, would your decision on this be subject to the answer to that question? Because what I would suggest that if it is, then we can ask Mr. McDonald, and if it's not, maybe you can ask that question under new business, and then he'd have some time to think about it between now and then. But, you know, again, if you believe that the information for that will determine how you will vote on this motion, then I can try and ask him to speculate now.
Well, considering what we're going through here, yes.
Okay.
It does.
So,
It
Mr.
will determine
McDonald,
that for me.
I don't know if you feel comfortable, but I know that we have the bylaw that's going to be presented to council a little later on. The recommendation you made at the last council meeting was amended to allow for the distance, the separation of the short-term accommodations to be waived in the downtown district. I believe this property is within that, no, it's not, it's across the street, so it's not in that geographic area. When we waived the restriction in the downtown geographic area, could we implement a higher or more stringent restriction for this property?
Through the chair, Councilor McCaw, I would suggest a more restrictive covenant of that nature would be incredibly difficult to enforce. It would take significant language. It would take planning policies to be in agreement with the bylaw, and it would take an owner that was willing to accept those on the front end of the development without challenge. And I don't like the city's odds of defending that position.
So if we look at the bylaw that's coming before us later on, Councillor McCaw, can I come back to you? We'll questions, and I'll find the correct clause that this property would be subject to, and we can discuss it. Fair enough? Okay, thank you. Councillor Alsop, I've got you next.
Yes, thank you. I've got a question first, and then some statements I'd like to make. First, thank you. Can you hear me now? The first part is the units that we're talking about, will they be all condos or will some be available for rental as well?
There will be condominium units, 108 units. However, we're open to those units being rented. I would expect a significant increase in unit rentals. Having dealt with the rentals in Belleville and in Napanee previously, I've seen the demand, and I would foresee that having these condo units available, a significant number of them would again be available for rent as well, which would again help alleviate some of that stress that's being put on the rental market right now due to a lack of inventory.
Wonderful, thank you. And so on this project, I think it's a very exciting project to look at 108 units going into downtown. One of the major ways that we're going to get out of this housing crisis that we have now is not through building a multitude of single detached homes, but through increasing density, particularly in urban areas. And I think that this project achieves that. I had a first date at the former site that was there, and it was not with my wife now, and we've been married, well, we've been together about 8 years, so for the better part of a decade, that has been a highly underutilized site in the city, and I certainly like the view that you shared with the building and everything in place over the view that we currently have. And I do appreciate that on the heritage side of it. I think that what you're proposing in terms of the monument, the benches, plaques, probably does a better job of communicating the heritage of that building and the people that live there than the building itself does now, because I've lived here my whole life and I had no idea that that structure was significant in that way. And then the fact that the former mayor, Mr. Tickle, didn't live in that existing structure, I think adds a layer of complexity to that argument. So provided that there's a genuine effort to communicate the heritage and the particular nature of that site in the development, I think it's a slam dunk, and very excited. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. Thank you. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the deputation. Sir, if this property maintains or is altered to be designated an historic property, meaning not you can't touch a nail or a doorknob.
Yes.
How significant would that be to altering or, in any way changing your plans? Can you go ahead with what we're looking at without that?
Yeah. So based on what we initially started to develop, that was our intention. However, in order to meet all the demand, and in order to work within the constraints, it would become difficult to just enclose it on that one lot. Okay. We feel that it would really be necessary for us to use both lots in order to create a long-lasting development that the city of Belleville would be proud of.
Well, I think the time has come to develop that property. As he said, we've seen one developer who came in, and we saw for quite an extended period of time they tried to pre-market units. It's pretty hard to do when you've got when you just show them pictures and a model. If you're going ahead with this, as anyone who knows me, I'm very much in favor of preserving heritage in this city, heritage buildings. For instance, if you wanted to at any time put a wrecking ball to the Connor house, where the Connor sisters lived by the library, or the Jameson Bone building, I'd be the first one to chain myself to a bulldozer on those. This house, while it has been listed among 126 other locations around the city, listing does not mean designation. Listing means, council, have a look at this before anybody does anything. That's what we're doing here today. The effect of listing a property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act is to provide the municipality with 60 days to consider. I've spoken to some people who say, as Councillor Alsop observed, this building has been altered, has been the heritage aspects of this building. I would challenge anyone to look at that building who knows arts and crafts period buildings and architecture to tell me, Councillor Thompson, you're familiar with that. Is that an arts and craft building? I don't think so anymore. It's been stuccoed over. It has triple pane windows that were never, it just doesn't resemble what it is intended to be before. So I am, as much as I don't like to go against staff, and I certainly don't like to oppose what our Heritage Belleville people say, this building itself, putting the development itself at stake, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. As again, I'll try any other buildings around town that are actually significant, I'll be the first one to say stop, but not in this case, because I don't think if you ask 10 people on the street if they believe that's a heritage building, 8 to 9 of them are going to say, that? No. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millette. Councillor Carr. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much, and great development. 2 questions, and as far as asking the general public, any building that's a heritage building, most people wouldn't know one building from another, whether it's heritage or not, so it's hard to argue that point. But 217 and 211, did you buy those two properties at the same time?
No, it wasn't our intention to demolish the building at 217 Pinnacle. It arose as we, originally we were given a plan from the previous builder, but there were several things that stuck out to us, namely the two underground parking. They were using a traditional stick frame for a 6-story building, and there were a lot of elements that weren't feasible. We developed our own plan, and then we started engaging with the city on evaluating that. However, that plan we felt was not a successful plan. There were issues with that plan, which is when we approached the owners of the site to the north. And we're trying to make it work where we can develop in this intersection, which badly needs some form of development there. And yeah, we feel like we're going to honor the history of that site much better than it is currently, and provide housing which is much needed to the city of Belleville.
So not to pry into private business of, let's say, have you purchased 211 already?
Yes, 211 is purchased and closed.
211 and 217?
No, so 217 we've purchased, we're waiting to close on it. That was part of the reason why we had applied for that demolition permit with the permission of the current owners in order to see where we stand and continue with the development.
And you said one time that the original house was destroyed or rebuilt? And do you know what year that might have been, or can somebody from the city tell me when that?
1907, I believe.
1907?
Yes.
And the original building was built?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. In the 1800s.
Pardon? The original building? The original building? Yeah.
The building that stands today.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm just trying.
So George Tickle, the former mayor, lived there on this site in the late 1800s and early 1900s. However, he sold the property, and a new building was built there in, I believe it was 1907, it might be 1909. I may be getting my dates incorrect there, but since that time, there have been several exterior refurbishments that have stripped some of the heritage value.
So have you had any discussion with the Heritage Committee on your proposition of showing some designation if we give approval to
we haven't engaged yet, but we're encouraged and excited to do so. We do want to do something, learning about this information about that site. We do want to preserve that value for sure.
And I've had discussions with some councillors, and I'm not really in favor of tearing buildings down, as they know, because in Canada, we don't seem to put the same value on buildings as they do over in Europe and other countries that preserve their buildings. And you know that well more than probably I do. So I get a little nervous of saying, well, it's just another building, we've done some renovations. It doesn't really fall. So if I vote for this, it's going to be because we want the development more than anything, but I'm concerned about, again, tearing down our buildings for heritage, because Canada is not a good name for that, for keeping our heritage buildings. And we need to keep our history. We're going over on a trip in May, and we're going to look at history buildings in Holland, Netherlands. So here we are, leaving Canada, leaving Belleville, and so anyways, it's interesting to know that what you're doing. I think it's wonderful. I'm looking forward to the development there. We need it. We need the residential. But again, I must say, I'm concerned about tearing down our buildings. So if you're going to promise that you'll make some heritage out of that.
Oh, absolutely. That's without question.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'll just cut to the chase. I'm excited. I love the presentation. 108 units downtown. You can just feel the energy already. I think you had 12 commercial places. I spoke to the owners of 217 Pinnacle. They weren't even aware it was a historical building. Yeah. They were as shocked as I think most of us here around the table. And you drive by that building. I've been in there for therapy. It's all new. There's been tons of renovations. When I think of historical places, I think of, as Councillor Millette touched on, you drive by and you know that that's old.
Yes.
This does not look old. My home looks older than that home. So anyway, good luck with that project. You got my support.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the first round? So, we'll come back, if you don't mind, I'm gonna come back to Councillor McCaw's question regarding short-term accommodations. And you may not be aware of this, Mr. Thin, but we have been struggling with the issue of short-term accommodations in our community and some of the problems that we have had, particularly in residential neighborhoods, single detached homes. And we are now enacting a short-term accommodation bylaw to regulate and to ensure that things are in place. So Councillor McCaw had inquired about the ability to restrict the use of short-term accommodators in this property. So, you know, you would sell it to somebody and then that person would then run it as a STA. So Councillor McCaw, in the bylaw that we're dealing with today on page 158 of the attachments, item 12 says, there shall be a minimum separation distance of 100 meters between short-term accommodation dwellings. Such distance shall be measured from the closest points between the dwellings, i.e. shortest distance between lot lines of the two dwellings. In this situation, the individual units are considered dwellings, so they would be there. 12.1 is the amendment that we passed for the downtown district, and it says, the minimum separation distance as noted in section 10 above shall not apply to that area as described by City Bylaw number 9275 and the defined area of the Belleville Downtown Improvement Area. And as Mr. McDonald told us, this property is not being constructed in the BDIA area. So, under the current provisions of the bylaw, there would be a restriction of 100 meters in between short-term accommodation locations. Now, you know, I think when we looked at the whole STA bylaw originally, we were, you know, more concerned about single detached residential neighborhoods, and we may have to look at this in the future. But as of today, if we pass this bylaw later on, then this property would be able to have one with the separation requirements. Okay? Anyone else on this item? Okay, so I have some direction from Mr. Deming on how we can handle this. Thank you very much. You can sit down. We've done a little bit of an unorthodox way, and I appreciate council's flexibility. What I want to do is I want to ask if there's anybody here that would also like to speak on this proposed development, particularly anybody who is opposed to council considering this. Seeing none, I just wanted to extend that because I understood that there might be someone coming today. So Mr. Deming has given us some advice. If we wish to support the resolution, we'll vote on it and it'll be adopted, and this property will then be on the process of being designated and dealt with. However, if council does not wish to take that step, and if we are supportive of the demolition of the property and the work that Mr. Thind has talked about in terms of the commemoration of the individual living there, then we will defeat this motion, and then that will be it. There is a conditional offer on 217, which is why the demolition permit was applied for and why it's here today. If we approve this designation and restrict the development of it, then they have enough time for their transaction to back out of it, and they're not going to proceed, and then they make the changes. However, if we do not endorse this resolution and it fails, then staff will issue the demolition permit because there's a time limit, and they can proceed with the development. So, Mr. Ashton, am I okay with that, or do you want to correct me?
So the CBO can issue the the demolition building permit after 60 days, which I believe
it's before the deadline for
almost
their
60 days is up now. I think.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So again, if we defeat this resolution, that's all we have to do. The development can go ahead. They will be CBO will issue the demolition permit, and they move on to the next stages of site plan development, applying for a building application or whatnot. In my previous meetings with the proponents or the developers, they have the resources to be able to commence this project. What they're waiting for is, are they able to do it? And so that's where we're at. Councillor Alsop? But can you turn your mic? Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, given the importance of getting new housing to the area, I would like to have a recorded vote on the issue.
Okay. All right. So, Councillor Alsop's asked for a recorded vote. Again, if this motion is defeated, we're on the the reverse negative here. So if you vote no, that's for this development. If you vote yes, that's not to allow this development to proceed. Councillor Thompson, we can straighten it out for you?
Yeah, just one question before we vote. The property was going to be developed, and not trying to put any negativity on this group, but what guarantee is there a guarantee, or is there perspective that this development will go ahead if we demolish another piece of property to make this?
There are no guarantees, Councillor Thompson. As you know, with every other development in the city,
I know.
Private property owners have, they come, they present their plans, and they proceed. You know, we all have to sort of take a look and judge in our own minds if what we've heard makes sense, and if they wish to go ahead. I can tell you that this is not the only property that this group has developed. And again, my question was that do they have the means to proceed, and they gave me those assurances. Okay. So again, just to be very clear, if a vote is no, that is to permit the development to go ahead. If the vote is yes, that is to designate the property and not to have it go ahead. Councillor Allsap's asked for a recorded vote. I'll ask the clerk to take the call. Yeah.
Councillor Kelly?
No.
Councillor Millette?
No.
Councillor McCaw?
No.
Councillor Sanderson?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Councillor Alsop?
No.
Councillor Carr?
No.
Mayor Panchuk?
No.
Motion fails.
Motion's defeated. Congratulations, gentlemen. We look forward to your development. 8A6, 2022 West Zwicks Park Seasonal Lease Agreements. It is the report from Report ECDEV 2022-07 for the 2022 West Zwicks Park Season Lease Agreements. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report number ECDEV 2022-07, 2022 West Zwicks Park Seasonal Lease Agreements, bylaws be prepared for Council's consideration. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And now we'll move to 8B, consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I will go around the table and ask, Councillor Sanderson, anything you want to pull?
8B6.
8B6. Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
It's pulled 8B6 and also 8B8, please.
8B8. Okay. Councillor Millette?
8B1.
Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
All right, so I need a resolution that the consent items be approved with the exception of items 8B1, 8B6, and 8B8. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor, it's carried. We'll move to those items. 8B1, it's a recommendation report for proposed amendment to the Belleville official plan for 621 Dundas Street East, City of Belleville. And the resolution is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council, that application B30-3-34 to amend the City of Belleville official plan for 621 Dundas Street East, City of Belleville be approved as follows. That Section B land use of the official plan be amended by redesignating a portion of the subject land from environmental protection to residential land use, and by creating a new East Bayshore planning subarea, and that the official plan be revised to include subsection 4.1.2 East Bayshore planning subarea with special provisions to address future environmental impact study requirements and future parkland dedication considerations, and that the adopted new official plan pending ministerial approval be updated to reflect these changes, or that these changes be permitted as a request under section 22, subsection 2.2 of the Planning Act to amend the ministerial approved new official plan as the case may be, and 2, that the bylaw to approve amendment to the official plan of the City of Belleville in accordance with the provisions of section 21 of the Planning Act be prepared for council's consideration. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Alsap and Councillor Millette. I'm sorry, Councillor Millette, you asked it, so you're going to move it. Councillor Alsap's going to second it, and you're on for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm going to support this. This is the plan to move forward with the next steps and provide the bylaw to amend the official plan for what's known as Osprey Shores, as I understand. And a number of us have been contacted by citizens, and I think, unfortunately, there's a fair bit of disinformation out there on this project. People need to understand that this is, by any definition, reclamation of a brownfield site. If there was ever a brownfield site in this city, this certainly is it. After what occurred industrially over the years, and again, you know, hindsight's 20/20, and we don't know what in 1962 or 3, it was certainly, as Nortel did and others, the habit to just take waste, barrels of it, just dump it out the back. Who knows? The problem is the legacy of that. And to further aggravate that legacy on this site, we had the environmental thug, James Sinclair, come in and unfortunately, with all the best intentions, the mayor and the council of the day sold that property for $1 in the belief that it was going to be remediated. Well, we found out that the aforementioned environmental thug Sinclair simply took land movers, excavators, and hollowed out channels to run off any contaminants into the bay, salvaged whatever he could to sell, and let the rest. He basically scraped, I think if anybody reads the reports, what people refer to as the Belleville marsh was simply scraped down to bedrock and is now simply a pond. This proposal has every protection, and I think if people take the time to look at it, those who oppose development of residential on this property don't understand that the developers have taken every pain to make sure that environmental areas are protected, such as they are. And let's remember again that if you dig down too deep on what soil's left on that property, you're going to find all manner of toxic stew. These people are going to allow for remediation and naturalization of, what is it, 60% of the site, I believe? A large percentage anyway. We have plans that we have seen and considered for naturalized areas with walking, boardwalks in the area, pathways along the bay. The simple fact of the matter is that any statements that this jeopardizes wetlands in any way, shape, or form simply aren't true. Anybody who believes that hasn't been paying attention. And anybody who believes that this should somehow be a nature preserve doesn't understand the fact that it's been private property for at least 2 decades now, since the aforementioned environmental thug Sinclair did his work on it. So I'm going to wholeheartedly support this, and I urge my fellow councillors to do the same.
Right. Anyone else on this item? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Then we move now to 8B6, the Jerry Masterson Thurlow Community Center Committee recommendation to dissolve, and the resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services City Clerk's Report Number DCS 2022-13, Council approved the recommendation of the Jerry Masterson Thurlow Community Center Committee that this committee be dissolved. It's moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Carr. Councillor Sandison, you first raised this, so I'll give you the first opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is my first term on council, and so my first opportunity to participate in that committee along with Councillor Carr and Councillor Thompson. And I had known Jerry prior to joining that committee, and you know, as the previous reeve for Thurlow, and a long time sort of icon, if you will, in the Thurlow community. I think we're at a point, because we're going to be taking it over and the committee's dissolving it, I think we really need to give recognition and thanks not only to Jerry, but to two other individuals as well, Carol Masterson and Teresa Brennan. And they've sort of been the core linchpins of the operation at Jerry Masterson. And it's provided a lot of benefit to the community. And so it's at a stage now where it's sort of being thought of like Parkdale Community Center, where it really needs to come under the fold. And I think that was actually initiated by Jerry and Carol in terms of it wasn't something that we as a committee pulled back from them. It was something that you know, after this many years, it's now time to sort of pass the reins, if you will. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank them again for everything they've done for the community and for that center. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. You know, it kind of pains me that we have this resolution before us. There's been a long-standing group of residents, and a few names have been mentioned. Teresa Brennan has been the bookkeeper and the reservation person at that facility for a lot of years, and has done exceptional work balancing out the schedule. That hall is a busy place. Certainly, Carol Masterson has been involved as caretaker there for some period of time. We have some long-standing board members such as Marie Beaudry and others who have been on that committee for decades. And unfortunately, what precipitated this was Ms. Brennan has made the decision to resign from her bookkeeper role. And she was a bedrock in terms of that operation, and certainly a support to that committee. And so that was a significant loss, and we weren't sure what to do next. And then as the conversation unfolded, and I had a couple conversations with her, and I reached out to Carol Masterson and as well as Jerry, and get an inclination as to where they see things going. It is a unique committee. I'll be honest with you, for elected officials to be on a committee that is very operational in nature is not something we should be doing, but it was I guess a legacy or remnant issue of amalgamation. And it worked, and it worked well. Certainly appreciate the support of city staff on the property maintenance side. Anything the committee brought forward for capital expenditures and council subsequently approved, that facility is well kept and modern and functionable, including a modern PA system and PowerPoint presentation system, the whole 9 yards. It's got all the video infrastructure there. As things needed to be replaced, they were purchased and upgraded, and that goes a lot to that staff and those long-standing board members. But for councillors, it's again a little bizarre to be involved in that day-to-day stuff, and nor should we. So as the conversation kind of unfolded, it was, well, if we're gonna continue, we need to recruit more community members, and there just wasn't the demand or the interest in having other people step forward. It was always the same people, and continue to faithfully serve the community in this regard. And so the conclusion that came out of the committee meeting was as a result of conversations with Jerry Masterson and others, and it was that determination that it just naturally unfolded this way. So it's unfortunate to be in this situation, but yet it does make sense for a number of reasons. It's curious to see that in the report it talks about that the Recreation, Culture, and Community Service Department have advised that in reviewing operations and maintenance of the facility with staff, it will be a significant and complex undertaking due to the nature and volume of the rentals and that have historically taken place, and the condition of the site, which is maintained to a very high standard. And so I guess we've set the city up very well, and staff are going to have to continue to meet that high expectation that particularly the volunteers and the paid staff at that community center has made, and hopefully it continues in the future. It continues to be a well-used facility, and I don't expect reservations and rentals to drop. It will keep them busy, but I'll just end with a thank you to those long-standing residents in Ward 2 who have continued to be faithful and serve, and many served not with income in mind, but simply because they wanted to make sure that that facility maintained at a high standard. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this? Okay, and I'll just echo everyone's comments. Thank you to all the volunteers, the current ones and the ones that have come before, that have preserved this property and made it what it is. I understand, you know, it's, you know, we just start running out of people. As people get older, there's no one that's stepping in. But there is a bright future for this property, particularly with the news of what's happening at Black Bear Ridge Village. There will be increased demands, and we'll see increased business up there. So we know it has a strong future, but thanks very much to everybody. And I want to say thank you also to members of council that have served on this committee over the years. As Councillor Carr said, it's not normal that we get involved in the day-to-day operational aspects of things, where our job is to be more policy-oriented and oversee that way. But you know, you can't argue with success. It's been a successful property. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8B8 is the City of Grant Committee, and the resolution is that Council approve the recommendations of the Grant Committee as outlined in the Director of Finance Treasurer's Report number DF 2022-07, City of Belleville Grant Committee. It's moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Councillor Carr, you had raised this. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. And I just briefly want to say that as usual and every year, it's always overprescribed. And I want to thank committee members for going through that exercise of reviewing high quality applications and try to take that $50,000 allocation and spread it as we possibly can to hit as many organizations that are doing great work to promote art in our community. And there's a list there that's in that report. I won't repeat it, but all intents and purposes, we've covered our community quite well with this recommendation and with council's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Chair Carr. Page 3 of the report, item 6.5. Children's Foundation Peter Smith Memorial Golf Tournament and Play Around for the Kids Golf Tournament. I see that the financial assistance requested was $4,000 and they're giving $2,500. Proceeds raised from the tournament will be used for the Reach for Success bursaries, and the second one is Play Around Tournament, $1,500 sponsorship. Proceeds from this tournament will be used for Camps of Hope and Playing for Keeps programs. Is there a breakdown of what those groups are, or does anybody know off the top? Sorry, I should have asked before.
Yeah, I was going to say
you probably got a rundown of when you were.
We have the full application that comes to us at Grant Committee. I don't have it in front of me. And the last one was sent to us paper copy, which I don't have.
Yeah.
The Playing for Keeps does provide funding, Children's Foundation, for children to participate in sports that cannot afford it. I know that one is there. I'm not 100% certain with all the other programs off the top of my head, and quite frankly, that was a lengthier Grant Committee meeting, so I don't know if anybody can assist. Maybe Finance has some details.
I have the information right here. So the request for financial assistance for $4,000 was broken down into two. So we're awarding the $4,000. First was for the Peter Smith tournament, the memorial tournament, $2,500 sponsorship for that, and the proceeds from this tournament will be used for the Reach for Success bursaries, scholarships, and youth award program. And then the second was a Play Around tournament for $1,500 scholarship and proceeds raised from this tournament will be used for Camps of Hope and Playing for Keeps programs. So that we are awarding the full request. It's just it was broken out amongst that. The key thing, Councillor Millette, is that part of the way that the request came in is basically they're asking us to sponsor. One of the items that was you receive as a sponsor is around, including golf, and the committee is recommending that we give it back to the organization to sell it so they can raise even more funds that way.
All right, thanks very much.
Okay. Anyone else on this? Call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Okay. 8C, council information matters, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go the other way, starting with Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCarr.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sandison.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw.
No thanks.
So then the resolution is that the agenda items be received. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. Then we move now to a motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. And so if I can, we'll deal with bylaws for first reading with bylaws, and I believe Councillor McCaw has a conflict, and can you please remind me of which ones? 55 and 57. So 55 and 59. So I'm going to ask Councillor McCaw to leave the room, and we'll deal with 3 readings of those bylaws, and then she'll come back and deal with the rest, if that's okay. So first reading of bylaw number 2022-55, which is the bylaw to approve the waterfront pop-up shop licenses for Park Play Micro Golf, and bylaw 2022-59, and it is the bylaw to approve the waterfront pop-up shop license for Brick Oven Pizza Truck. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2022-55 and 2022-59. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Any questions or discussion on those 2 items? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws 2022-55 and 2022-59. Moved by Councillor Sandison, second by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. We'll get Councillor McCaw back in, and then here she comes, and then we'll deal with the rest of them. So, first reading of bylaws, and if it's okay, I'm just going to read the numbers because we have a lot of them today. 2022-46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 56, 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Alsop and Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2022-46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 56, 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. Moved by Councillor Alsop, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Carr. Any questions or discussion on any of those bylaws? All in favor? It's carried. And then third and final reading of bylaws number 2022-46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 56, 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66. Moved by Councillor Alsop and seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. New business. I do have an item for new business colleagues. It is the ratification of the collective agreement between the City of Belleville and Unifor and Local 1839. And the resolution is that the memorandum of a settlement concerning the 2021 to 2025 collective agreement between the Corporation of the City of Belleville and Uniform and its Local 1839, representing the city's transit operators, be ratified, and that bylaw number 2022-68, being a bylaw to approve and authorize the execution of the renewal collective agreement between the Corporation of the City of Belleville and Unifor and this Local 1839 for the term April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2025, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of April 2022. Moved by Councillor Sandison, second by Councillor Alsap. Any questions or comments on this? I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any new business they'd like to raise today? Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I could have done this in announcements, but I have a link, and I'll forward the link to anybody because the report itself is, well, as you can see, it's quite bulky. This is a study out of the University of Waterloo, and it was just released just a couple of weeks ago, and it was created by the Intact Center at the University of Waterloo on climate adaptation. And it's, Belleville has made one of the dubious top 10 lists, unfortunately, on this list. And the name of the report is Irreversible Extreme Heat, Protecting Canadians and Communities from a Lethal Future. Unfortunately, this study, and again, it's quite well researched and quite well documented, lists us as one of the top 10 exposed communities in Canada to climate-induced very hot days. The good news is this doesn't happen, this projection is 2051 to 2080. And by that point, what we have in the recent history is fewer than 10 days a year where the number of very hot days rises above plus 30 degrees Celsius. By 2051, we can see that nearing 40 days. Yeah. So it's not a very good list to be on. My hometown, Windsor, not surprised to anyone who's ever been there, is almost right off the charts, rising to almost 60 days by the time 2051 rolls around. The reason I raise this, and again, if anybody needs it, I have a link to the study. It underscores the importance of why last year we adopted the climate emergency declaration for the city of Belleville. And I say this because earlier in the agenda, we as a city are, and as chair of the Green Task Force, we're doing our bit, and this calls for the simple things that you can do to make the difference. Planting trees, green rooftops. I look out the windows here from City Hall on 4th floor, I see a lot of flat roofs that are heat sinks. They're just producing heat. Green roofs can happen. But I know earlier in our meeting, and we didn't speak about it that much, but we've spent a total of $295,663 for new inverters for the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center, which, as most people may or may not know, is equipped with 500 kilowatts of solar panels, which became operational 10 years ago in 2012. That is producing a great amount, and it's excellent use, as is the roof of the water filtration plant for a solar farm, basically. So we're doing our bit to help offset these effects. We can't take our foot off the gas in respect to doing those. And I'm proud to be working with a committed group of people under Perry DeCola and the environmental services staff. And the Green Task Force, we have a number of events coming up, tree sapling giveaways and all manner of things. So I will, anybody who needs this, I'll share this report. It's quite interesting. It's a little frightening, but I mean, it gives us ways that we can move going forward, simple solutions, and they're not out of reach for our city professionals. As we've seen, we're already going down that path, so thank you.
Great, thank you. No one else? Then we will move. We have no motions today, but I do have a notice of motion, and Councillor Feeney was unable to attend today, but she was kind enough to send me a notice of reconsideration of bylaw 2006-55, the sign bylaw, in order to amend it to ban the display of signs related to municipal elections. So she will be prepared to speak to the notice of reconsideration, as we've dealt with this item already this term, and that will happen at the next meeting. But I've received that and I've accepted it, and it is on the record now for the next meeting. Does anyone else have any notices of motion they wish to make today? Seeing none, I'll move now to announcements. Anyone else for announcements? Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'd just like to congratulate the Belleville Senators, Coach Troy Mann, assistant coaches and players on their first clinch for a playoff berth in the Calder Cup playoffs. Yesterday, there was 2 season ticket holder buses that went up. I drove up separately with some family, and I saw the mayor and his wife there. It was nice to sit in a very rowdy section of the Coca-Cola Coliseum. There was about 5,200 fans there, but the Belleville Senators fans and residents of Belleville were recognized. We were loud, and certainly made our presence known. And you know, as a season ticket holder since their inception, it's great to have professional hockey in our community. And to the quality that we have. I was actually up in Ottawa at the Ottawa Senators game on Saturday, and then Toronto on Sunday, and seeing the players that are in both leagues, because we had a couple of call-ups that played in the NHL lineup, one scoring his first NHL goal, dropped the gloves and then had a fight, and that's an NHL first. But then to play the next day with a Belleville Senators uniform and wear that B, we have a fantastic opportunity here that continues to put our community on the national and international stage. So congratulations to that organization, and looking forward to the playoffs.
Excellent. Anyone else for announcements? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a quick announcement. We are exactly from today 2 months away from the city's first Caribbean Festival. It's June 25th, so we're 2 months out. I want to thank Alicia and Karen. They've been so helpful. We've been having, we just completed last week our 4th meeting, and the committee is from the city, Alicia, Karen, and I, and the rest of the committee, there's about 16 or 18, have Caribbean roots now living in Belleville, and it's their life lived. It's going to be authentic, and they are developing a beautiful plan for June 25th. So it's been really exciting working with so many of our committee members from Jamaica, Trinidad, Dominican, throughout the Caribbean. We've had representation. So 2 months from today, it's the Caribana Festival here in Belleville.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I have some proclamations and a few announcements. First, I would like to proclaim April 24th to 30th as National Volunteer Week in the city of Belleville. 24 million Canadians give their time through formal or informal types of volunteering, contributing close to 5 billion volunteer hours per year. Volunteers here in the city of Belleville mentor our children, support those feeling isolated, they beautify our green spaces, and fundraise for our charitable organizations. Our volunteers have stepped up during the COVID-19 pandemic to support families, friends, neighbors, and strangers, and even people standing up to systematic racism, and also people sharing insights on how to create a more just and equitable society. I also proclaim the month of May as Syringomyelia Awareness Month, and I wish former Councillor Culhane was here to be able to tell me of these medical terms. It is a rare spinal cord disorder, and the Belleville sign and Bridge Street Bridge will be lit up in blue to support this month from May 1st to 2nd. The bridge will be lit up May 1st to 2nd, and the whole month will be declared. I also proclaim the month of May as Community Living Month, which is a province-wide initiative with a unifying message of inclusion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The Belleville sign and the Belleville Street Bridge will be lit up in blue and green to support this month from May 14th to 22nd. I also proclaim the month of May as Huntington Disease Awareness Month. Huntington disease is a hereditary neurodegenerative illness with physical, cognitive, and emotional symptoms. The disease is similar to having ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's all at the same time. To support their international Light It Up 4HD campaign, the Belleville sign and Belleville Street Bridge will be lit up blue and purple to support this month from May 23rd to 31st. And from May 3rd to 8th, the Belleville sign and the Bridge Street Bridge will be lit black, red, and yellow to celebrate our delegate group who will be in the city of Belleville from our sister city of Lahr, Germany. 8 delegates will be visiting us this year and will participate in multiple tours and meetings to further develop the relationship between our cities and explore further economic and business partnerships that we can utilize. I am pleased that Lord Mayor Marcus Ibert has accepted my invitation to visit Belleville for his first-time visit to our city. My thanks to city staff and members of the Cultural Exchange Committee for their assistance in making the arrangements. On March 28th, City Council met with City of Belleville staff to review and approve the 2022 budget of over $265 million. Information about the 2022 budget and all related documents can be found online at belleville.ca. On March 31st, the groundbreaking was held for the new addition to the St. Joseph Catholic School to add 481 new student spaces, 6 learning commons, 20 learning studios, gathering stairs, breakout spaces, 2 dedicated early on rooms, and an additional 49 licensed childcare spaces. Congratulations to the Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic School Board for receiving approval for this addition and renovation, and thank you to the provincial government for funding it. On April 1st, I was honored to attend the grand reopening of Sugar Mama's Bake Shop. The mother-daughter duo moved from their College Street location to 365 North Front Street, and they offer a variety of fresh baked goods every day for every craving. On April the 3rd, I attended the tribute for Mr. Eugene Melnick in Ottawa. Mr. Melnick was an important member of the City of Belleville sports and entertainment community as the owner of the Belleville Senators and the Ottawa Senators. Mr. Melnick was responsible for bringing the Belleville Senators to thrive in our city, and that legacy will continue for years to come. I was subsequently invited to attend the funeral of Mr. Melnick, and our best wishes go to his family and organization during this time of grief. It is indeed unfortunate that Eugene Melnick could not share with us the wonderful joy of yesterday when the Belleville Senators qualified for their first postseason in the team's history. We look forward to exciting playoff action this year and wish the entire organization the very best of luck. Let's get behind the team and make sure that we have sellout crowds for every playoff game we are privileged to attend this year. On April the 7th, I was on site at the Hunt on Front at 381 Front Street in downtown Belleville to celebrate the grand opening and ribbon cutting of this new business. Emma's new store features unique treasures, old and new. From April the 10th to 13th, I and Councillors Thompson, Millette, and Feeney attended the Ontario Good Roads Association Conference in Toronto, the first in-person conference since the beginning of COVID. We heard from industry leaders on topics of importance to Ontario's municipal transportation and infrastructure sector, and we had meetings, individual meetings with ministers. I was very pleased that my meeting with Transportation Minister Caroline Mulroney resulted in a very important announcement last week, which for the first time in the history of our city, over 30 years of lobbying, the Eastern Ontario Transportation Master Plan now includes the Belleville East Arterial Road, and that's important because the province cannot fund projects that are not in the plan, and we are now in the plan, so that's very good news. On April the 14th, I attended a press conference to celebrate Belleville Police Service's latest hire. Police Chief Mike Callahan introduced Thomas McDonald, who comes to the force through Pathways to Independence and is helping wash cars, assist maintenance staff, and delivering paperwork, among other things. This is one of the first steps in making the force more inclusive, and we congratulate Chief Callahan and his crew. And I point out that the City of Belleville, through our grant committee recommendation, is funding that position for the first year, and I know that will continue. On April the 19th, I attended the provincial funding announcement at the Belleville Police Service. $281,870 was received for a victim services offer, or a victim liaison officer, and $343,600 for frontline community stakeholders training, assisting with victims. And that is wonderful support and important funding. On April the 19th, I was fortunate to present a check to the Belleville General Hospital Foundation in the amount of $125,000, which represents the first installment in our 5-year commitment of $1.2 million to the foundation to assist with maternal and mammograph equipment. On April 20th, we were at the CA Arena for former Councillor Jack Miller's press box rededication. The former press box of the Yardman Arena was dedicated to Jack for his contributions to local sports as the voice of the Belleville Bulls. And then when the CAA Arena was constructed and he became the voice of the Belleville Senators, we were missing something. We were missing the fact that the press box wasn't renamed for him. So on April 20th, we rededicated the current press box to him with a beautiful wrap designed and installed by Gilmore Reproductions, and I want to thank everybody who participated and helped make it happen. It was a wonderful event, and I thank everyone for making, as I said, special, and a very big special thank you to the Belleville Senators organization for their assistance in honoring our former colleague and longtime city councillor. On April 21st, I attended the celebration for MPP Darrell Cramp's retirement. MPP Cramp has been a wonderful working companion for the City of Belleville in both his role as a federal member of Parliament and now as a provincial member of Provincial Parliament, and we wish him well in his retirement. And I felt so privileged as a representative of the City of Belleville to be included in the groups who were asked to provide comments. On April 22nd, I joined, speaking of Councillor Millet's comments under new business regarding the fact that Belleville is seen as a future hotspot temperature-wise, I joined the Friends of the Bell Creek for a tour of the Bell Creek area, specifically where the proposed Hanley North development was going. We learned about the importance of wetlands and how they moderate and reduce rising temperatures. And I want to thank all the volunteers that were involved with organizing that day. There were two large groups of people who went walking around in the marsh and in the creek area and saw everything from an amazing hardwood forest to maple trees that were harvested for many years, and some of the ecological benefits. And lastly, last Friday on April 22nd, I had the great privilege to attend the Belleville Chamber of Commerce President's Dinner to celebrate past President Peter Kempenaar, where we presented him with a key to the city for his contributions to the City of Belleville, and to welcome incoming President Anthony Callahan and the Board of Directors for a very busy year. COVID has affected all organizations, including the Chamber, but hats off to them for continuing. We are looking forward to a full return of events this year, and I think everyone can't wait for it to happen. But thanks to everybody that evening. It was a great turnout, and I look forward on Wednesday this week to providing my first State of the City address for the Chamber of Commerce members on Wednesday morning at the banquet center at the old Greek Hall, and not the banquet center. They're calling it the Grand now, I believe, the Grand at the old Greek Hall. And I have 3 years of catching up to do, but it's going to be very, very good. So with that, I will ask for a confirmatory bylaw, and the resolution is that bylaw number 2022-67, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on April 25th, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of April 2022. Councillor Allsap, seconded by Councillor Millet. All in favor? Carried. A motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Thompson and Councillor Allsap. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on May 9th.